Have you ever stopped to wonder why a standard piece of paper measures 8.5 by 11 inches? It's a seemingly arbitrary size that we've all come to accept. But where did it originate? The roots of this standard size can be traced back to the early days of paper production. Picture the scene. It's the 1660s, and Dutch papermakers are dipping wooden molds into vats filled with pulp and water. This method was the cornerstone of paper production, and through trial and error, these frames eventually settled into a standard size of 44 inches long, a length that conveniently accommodated the outstretched arms of the laborers. Dividing this length by 4 gave papermakers a paper size of 11 inches. The story behind the width of the paper is a tad more obscure. It's suspected that the Dutch allowed for 17 inches on the mold to accommodate watermarks. Slicing these sheets in half resulted in paper that was 8.5 inches wide. But the journey to standardization was far from over. In an era of typewriters, copiers, and printers, the need for a unified paper size became apparent. And so, the 8.5 by 11 inch paper emerged as the ideal candidate. This size comfortably allows for 65 to 78 characters per 6.5 inches of type once 1-inch margins are subtracted. This paper size became even more widespread when Presidents Herbert Hoover in the 1920s and Ronald Reagan in the 1980s mandated these dimensions for all government forms. This move was, in part, a strategy to minimize paper waste. While the 8.5 by 11 inch paper is the most common, there is another standardized length of 14 inches. This extra 3 inches is believed to have been introduced to satisfy lawyers' need for more space for lengthy contracts, hence the term legal size paper. This size has also gained popularity in restaurants, where the extra space is useful for listing menu items. So to summarize, the standard paper size of 8.5 by 11 inches has its roots in the 1660s with Dutch papermakers and their wooden molds. The size was further cemented by typewriter specifications and government mandates. And while other sizes do exist to cater to specific needs, most paper today is a reflection of the limitations of craftspeople from centuries ago who simply couldn't get their arms around anything else.